And then you can go to unlockingthesoul.com and you can get all these links, or you can search for Unlocking the Soul on Amazon or Spotify or YouTube and find my material there. That's all I got. So if hopefully this sparked some Q&A questions for some of you, or if you have any comments, I am.
Well, my first thoughts are I am just amazed, overwhelmed. My God, no wonder you've had to give up your day job.
Exactly.
It is just what you have done is absolutely incredible. And so I'll leave it over to anybody who'd like to ask a question. You all know how to use the raise hand at the bottom. And Dan, can I ask you to moderate questions?
Sure. I actually very briefly have a question of my own. Be possible for you to actually play for us at least a short section of one of your films?
Yeah. Let's see. Any request? Any topic you want to?
Whatever you'd like. Just maybe a minute or two or three, just to give us a flavor of it.
Sure. Let's see here. Do Oh, the brain is a world-building machine here.
Unlocking the Soul, hosted by Rob Simperman and produced by Simplify Films. Episodes cover mature and
You'll need to share your screen.
Oops.
You need to reshare your screen, yeah, and share sound. Share sound.
32. The brain as a world-building machine.
Okay, there we go.
I woke up the morning I wrote this section with an insight about the soul experience on Earth. Your brain is an efficient world-building machine, and that has implications for reality and your soul. Let me back up. So I have sleep apnea, where my breathing gets constricted periodically while I sleep. I've only had it for a year. Before that, I would wake up remembering 0 or 1 dream per morning, often hazy. Now, my sleep usually gets interrupted a couple of times during the dreaming REM cycles, so I often remember 3 or 4 dreams a night, sometimes very clearly. So now I track my sleep, and I noticed, for example, I had a 25-minute REM cycle just before waking up. And during that brief time, I was attending an industry conference or convention in Manhattan, entering a hotel ballroom full of vendors. I even called my boss from there and discussed how to work around some meetings I needed to call into so I could attend certain scheduled speakers. I even strategized how to best get the giveaways from the vendors before the other conference guests who were riding the elevator with me. Why am I telling you all this? Because I never had that experience. But in that 25 minutes, I lived a convincing, full-color, high-resolution, simulated reality that involved strategic thinking, social interactions, memories from my waking life, false memories, and emotions. Incredible. I had other dreams during those other REM cycles I showed you. So tracking my sleep has helped me appreciate just what an efficient builder of worlds the brain is. There's not even any reason for the creation of an industry convention in Manhattan. That's just what it does when it disconnects from the signal that syncs up our brain with a collectively designed world, the world we share when awake. I've previously described the brain as a radio receiver, but that's not quite right. If you spin the tuner dial on a radio, you get static. But if you shut off the sensory input to your brain, you don't get static. It's as if your radio lost a signal from your NPR news station, and so the radio started creating its own programming with fictitious interviews, news reports, musical guests, and more, all on its own. And it's not just while you're sleeping. Cut off that matrix feed in a sensory deprivation tank, and you'll start hallucinating in minutes. It's exactly the same thing. You either feed the brain sensory input to drive the story, or it creates its own. So back to the soul. Does this mean that near-death experiences are hallucinations while the body's senses are offline? Or that past life regression hypnosis sessions are simply creations of a bored brain? Actually, the opposite, and I'll tell you why. And this is the conclusion I woke up with. Remember, what our physical bodies are, according to our spiritual sources, the vehicles for the soul to experience the physical realms, third through fifth densities. Our brains must be fairly self-sufficient because the frequential translations required to communicate between the physical and spiritual planes is extreme. Therefore, the need for our very own in-house reality generator is obvious. It's like how you'd want some decent computing power in your PC if your internet bandwidth was too slow to work off a remote server. Okay, next, the realities we experience, both the shared matrix and the auto-generated dream realities and hallucinations, are only backdrops, stories on autopilot. We overlay our creativity and self-direction upon them, manipulating the templates with our free will.
Okay, I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love dreams. I'm as intrigued and mystified by them as anyone. I like to think of them as the kindergarten of the afterlife. And if we approach them in the right way.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about my opinions. Any questions from anyone? No questions. I
think
guess
We're
we're all-
thinking, Dan. We're
I
thinking.
think,
we're
I
all
think we're all
enlightened.
stunned.
We're stunned, All right,
Jill
I'll
Williams.
go. I'll do a quick one.
Oh,
Just a real quick one.
okay.
Rob, what was the book on channeling that you used to start yourself off with?
I think it's called You Are the Channel. Let me actually that's not a bad you want me to share the beginning? That's all just in the first minute of that episode. Let me just bring that up if you want. Actually, that's a good one to share. Let me share that. This will answer better than I will.
Unlocking the Soul, hosted by Rob Simperman and produced by Simple.
And somebody asked me if I did channeling.
Oh, look at that. I mentioned you guys, see?
But when I downloaded the book called You Are a Channel by Sarah Landon.
There it is.
It turns out it's exceptionally easy to get started. I can summarize the process. You commit to doing this every day. 1, take 3 very slow, deep breaths. 2, imagine your consciousness stepping down a 10-step staircase from your head to your heart, where it's flooded with light. 3, ask that you be protected by your guides or the Christ consciousness, and that only beings with positive energy and good intentions come through. Now, that step comes from a lot of channeling experts, but note Sarah Langdon advises against focusing on negative beings. She reminds us that we get what we focus on, and even after 10,000 hours channeling and 5,000 channeling students, she's never encountered a negative force that can interfere with the higher energies you channel. 4, ask your higher self or another ascendant being what they want you to know today. 5, accept that it may feel like you are making it up, but trust. Don't question or analyze. Just write whatever comes to your mind. And 6, no matter what you wrote, read it aloud to another person or at least to yourself afterwards. What felt silly at the time may have new meaning when you're not in your own internal thoughts voice. And that's it. So I started channeling.
Wow.
Thank you. That's great. That was great.
I think JL had a question.
Oh, hello. I was interested when you said about getting an energy healer, a clearer. How did you find one? And
Well, I started doing a Google search, I believe. I found this woman, Barbara Buck, in I think it was Seattle, and she had lots of different options, different offerings that seemed exactly what I was looking for. She said, surprisingly, she said that her community, they all sort of know each other. You know, she said she stays in touch with lots of other energy healers, and she feels like they're all kind of on the same page. Because she was talking about how like they've been noticing that more and more people these days are coming back over and over again for clearings, because and they concluded that people think that an energy healer is going to solve their problems, but the majority and the vast majority of issues are things that are internal to our own selves and our own minds, and they're not like beings that can be cleared or blockages that can be cleared one time. They have to do with like things that we haven't confronted in our own past. And one big one that I came up with in my discussion with her was I have a lot of throat problems, probably half a dozen different things that are medically in my life, and they could all be tied to like the range from like my nose to my stomach, like in that little area. Um, and we conclude that a possible cause is that when I was a child and my parents were getting divorced, I felt like my voice wasn't heard in that process. And it was like a very emotional thing to go through. And she helped me bring this, to my attention. And it totally made sense that this is something that I've not confronted. It's been something I've been repressing. And and that even ties in with all the things I've read in the past about like, like your throat chakra has to do with your ability to, express your truths and to communicate and things like that. So I think there's a lot to that. And that sounds like it's the majority of energy healing work is stuff like that. It's not, possessions or parasites and things.
Okay. This is interesting. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Hyacinth, you are on.
I was interested about this channeler. Would it say a channel? He channeled Lucifer, or how does
Lucifer,
that?
yeah. It's Guy Needler. Actually, I interviewed him directly. Had a good long conversation with him. So he has a book called The History of God, and he didn't channel Lucifer directly. He channels a number of beings up this kind of up the hierarchy, all the way up to like what he calls, the 99th level, which he says is kind of the top. And he basically says that he got in touch with the God personality, like the actual God. A lot of people would be skeptical about that, but he has a lot of good reasons why he believes it. And that book blew me away. Like it's a really good description of how the universe divided its energy and became dualistic instead of just one big, unified energy source, and why and how it all works. But yeah, one of the stories in there was about the Lucifer story that was also channeled to him. Um, and it's obviously it's not like he was a bad guy. He was just as the stories that were told, he got himself in some trouble, but he also is the one that you could call it the tree of knowledge or whatever, but gave free will to humanity when it wasn't originally the plan. But yeah.
Right. And yet he's called Lucifer, which means the maker or bringer of light.
Mm-hmm.
Latin.
Well,
Yeah. I can't
he
remember.
was supposed to be the bright morning star.
Mhm.
He was the number one.
Yeah, I mean he was one of the
I
builders.
got it. He challenged God that I am as great as you.
Yeah, I mean, according to this information, he was one of the builders of humanity and our section of the universe. I mean, he was one of the architects of it. So he was, whether you want to call him a fallen angel or not, I mean, he was one of the architects, and he just basically took it on himself to give this free will to humans, even though the council or the collective that he was with wasn't bought into that plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah, you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I first just wanted to comment on the healing. I took a class this morning through the Arthur Finley College October weekend program where they were offering courses. But anyway, this wonderful man named Tim Smith, who's an energy healer, was reminding people that, yes, he can try to bring energy through from higher realms to help people. But he really kind of said, a lot of people's plans here, can't be changed, or it's part of their reason to be on Earth. So, he said miracles do happen, but a lot of times, it's part of your plan. So I just thought that was interesting. But I was wondering, my question is, I've noticed lately when I listen to people, like the man who speaks about the most benevolent outcome, I think he's might have been on this program once, but a lot of people are have
Yeah.
prophecies that you said prophecy before, but it just seems like from now to the next like 4 to 5 years, it sounds like there's going to be some huge problem. And I was just, Earth worldwide with the Earth or humanity and everything. So I was wondering if you had any information or you've come across that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you're talking about the Gentle Way newsletter and
Yes. Yep.
Tom something. Yeah. I am a little disturbed by the prophecies in his newsletters. I must admit. And for those who aren't aware, it's basically that, oh, in the next 3 months or so, there's going to start being some major earthquakes on the West Coast, and then Yellowstone's going to erupt a couple months after that, and cover ash from California to Chicago. Yes, I'm I'm let's just say I'm glad that he gave some precursors that are going to be some like moderate earthquakes in like November and December and January, that we would know whether any of that has any actual possibility of coming true, and I'm keeping an eye on that. I'm actually thinking about doing an episode soon. I was telling my wife a few right before this about that kind of concept, and about, should you be planning for disasters? Does planning for them help bring them about into your reality? And then even if there were one, you can imagine shifting into this sort of primal, like ego-driven survival mode, and like, you're gonna stock up with weapons, and if someone tries to steal your food, you'd shoot them or whatever. Would it be worth trying to do that just to survive? Or do you say, well, my soul's more important and I'm experiencing this, and if somebody wants to, take my life, then that's on them. But if I fight back, then it might damage my own path, and there's some real big topics in there.
There was just, Rob, you're reminding me, there was back in the 1970s, there was a woman in the San Francisco Bay Area who kept predicting that
Yeah.
California would fall into the ocean on a particular date. And so many people were anxious about the date. And when the date arrived, she died.
Ah,
Oh,
oh my
boy.
gosh.
You call it poetic justice or whatever, but it was one of those things you never forget.
Wow. Yeah, and about those was that cult that was following that comet like 20 years ago or so,
Oh,
and
yeah, Comet
the date actually,
Kohoutek. And then there was
yeah, hit.
Gordon Michael Scallion's predictions back in the early 90s. And there
Ugh.
was it's kind of a cottage industry in
Yeah.
prophecy.
I mean, and then it goes back to, Nostradamus, of course, predicted all kinds of disasters. And then I know Dolores Cannon did a lot of channeling with Nostradamus's soul, apparently, and concluded that that was describing like a worst case scenario. But this like council of light beings decided that we're going to move to a new Earth instead of getting destroyed the way that Noah's time and many other times that humanity was wiped out, Atlantis, and now we're going to be given this chance to move up instead. So that was averted. So there's definitely chances to change fates like that. And as far as changing fate, well, I was going to say something earlier. No, that's okay. I mean, I like I said, based on some of these predictions, I have been beefing up my own disaster preparedness in my house. So I figured there's no downside to doing that, having some extra food and water options and things like that.
I think there's actually a practical reason to do some of that, and that is that our whole civilization now, globally, pretty much, is reliant on a certain infrastructure.
Mhm.
Obviously, the power grid and also the internet. And we've been seeing recently how fragile and how universally dependent we are on that fragile infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
especially
I
I'm
don't
being
think
here
there's
in the,
anything wrong with practical, at least short-term preparations.
yeah, in the Washington D.C. area here, we don't have many natural disasters, but we could definitely be hit by cyber attacks and terrorist attacks and things. So I actually bought a generator last week. So
We also you had an earthquake there not too long ago. That was about 10 years ago, was it, that cracked the
yeah,
Washington Monument? Yeah.
yeah. That was the worst we've had It wasn't that bad from
Well,
global.
at least geologically.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Yeah.
Sarah, are you complete?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Regina,
If someone else has their hand up, they can go before me. I don't want to be a hog.
you're not a hog.
Okay. Um, I'm going to move the subject off of disaster. Well, I will skirt it off of it. Let's put it that way. Prophecies, Delphi. These have been around forever. And we can prophesize as a parent to our children, don't do that or you're going to get spanked.
Mhm.
Don't do that or I'm going to put soap in your mouth. There's a prophecy right there. It's up to the child whether it comes true. Each thing that we do, it's up to how we think. It's how we create our own mindset. If we look at these things and go, yeah, it's possible, but it isn't my probable, you changed your vibration. If you say it's possible and I'm going to worry about it and stress about it, then it's likely. If it's possible, how can I prepare so that I don't have to think about it? If I'm
Mhm.
going to prepare my life for the possibility that my car is going to explode when I'm driving, uh, that's what I'm going to think about every time I get in the car. Instead, I'm just going to make sure I have my tires cared for and just do all the things that you need to do to care for your life. Are there possibilities and probabilities of a lot of negative things happening? Yes. Where do you want to put your mindset? So, how do you want to keep your vibration? And that's really, I think, where this group is about. It's not about not believing or not accepting that there's earthquakes all around the world. If you go onto the earthquake map, you'll see there's a gazillion earthquakes happening every day. It happens. If you want to go on the fire map, loads of fires around the world. Same with the flood map. It all happens, whether it's typhoons or cyclones or tornadoes, it all happens. What part of you are you going to focus on now? Do you have a bug out bag? Great. Do you know where your paperwork is and know what you need to throw in the car in an emergency? Great. That's about it. The rest is you just take care of everybody in your life around you. I know that sounds very la-di-da, but I've lived with a firefighter my whole life. And he'd always say, the kids would run into the house, oh, interrupt, interrupt, interrupt. He'd say, stop. Is it an emergency? Emergency can only be life or death. If it's life or death, whose life or death? Is it the cat? Is it yours? Is it the neighbors? Is it something we can do about immediately? And if we can't, we better call 911. That was always his response. Call 911. Like,
That's great. I love
or
the
if
idea of preparing so you don't have to think about it and obsess over it.
it's
It's a
important.
great
It's like
balance. Yeah.
it's the Boy Scout rule. Be prepared and let it go. Carry your knife and make sure it's sharp. It's no good if it's dull. You know, but you're not preparing to kill an animal. You're just preparing because you might have to cut your shoelace off because your shoes are too tight. You want a sharp knife when you need it.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there. And because every time we focus on the ugly or the things that we have no control, if we can do something about it, if we can create a change and we think about this and we have a solution is a positive way of being. You create your solution to create a higher vibration. you know Things like that's what I'm talking about. That's how you be prepared. So you can look at things really dark and be in fear, or you can look at things with compassion. And those anyway, blah blah blah. Sorry.
That was
Well,
great.
no, that's great, Regina. It's like everything else, it comes down to attitude. And then everything sort of follows from that. Hyacinth.
Wendy, may I take this opportunity of asking this group something about hurricanes?
Of course.
There's a hurricane currently blowing in Jamaica, which is where I'm from. And what my nephew has just said is that there was the first Category 3 hurricane was in 1951. The second was in 1988, 37 years later. The one that's blowing currently is Melissa, 37 years since the last one. Any ideas what 37 could mean?
I know.
And this-
Does anybody else have something?
Because it's a Category 4, the heaviest they ever have had. But it's just significant. And I just threw it out if anybody could have an idea what the 37 years mean.
So are you thinking numerologically or?
Well, it just seems to me a pattern.
Mhm. I guess that's one thing. That's something we'll have to wait another 37 years for to see if it's a coincidence or something more.
Yeah,
But it's a good observation.
yeah.
Sure.
Mhm. I won't be here 37 years from now.
Well,
I don't think many of us will be.
Yeah, we get to watch from the viewing platform, Hyacinth,
yeah,
from above.
from the balcony, as Sarah would say. Gloria.
A couple of things. This morning, Hyacinth, I listened to a meteorologist from that area, and he was warning that it won't just be Jamaica, it will be Haiti, and they can expect wind gusts of 180 miles an hour, 3 feet of rain or more.
Whoa.
So there'll be devastating floods. And so I ask everybody to say a prayer for those people, for all of us, because that's beyond life-threatening. That's devastation. And so that was what I listened to the meteorologist from that area warning people this morning, that it's if you're not in a hurricane, 200 mile an hour resistant house, to go to your neighbors, to get out of your home and into someplace high enough that you can survive, because there'll be terrible flooding. But yeah, it's a horrible, horrible situation. So pray people. And the other thing I wanted to say was, to Rob, I want to put in a plug for Chico Xavier. I think of him as a contemporary channeler, even though he's not with us anymore. This was not a highly educated man, and with blindfolds on, he channeled more than 400 books in different languages, and a lot of them now are in English, and some of us are studying them. He was taken to court by the church and other groups that he must have cheated with the scientific knowledge that he was revealing, and he was exonerated. And his country ended up submitting his name for a Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't get it, but he was honored as one of the great spiritual leaders of our time by Brazil. And in one of his books that I read most recently, On the Way to the Light, very interesting information from his spirit communicator's name is Emmanuel. And Emmanuel, who represents a whole group of spirits coming through from the other side, that as a let's see, our Earth and our species, that the thinking part was given to North America when people migrated. The thinking part was given to North America, but the heart was given to Brazil, and that's why Brazil has come up as a very spiritual country, whereas America is more materialistic. And so that's a really interesting book, On the Way to the Light by Chico Xavier, who channeled Emmanuel.
I will check that out. I've not.
Yeah, it's in English. It's in English.
Even better.
And it's a real quick read. It's a little book, and it's a I don't know, I want to say 120, 130 page synopsis of the evolution of humankind on the earth. Can't get it quicker than that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Chico's an amazing channeler, and such a good soul. Did so many good works, and always lived in poverty. Just lots of credibility with his people in Brazil. He's a Brazilian hero. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to read that. Thank you.
And one of his books was turned into a feature movie called Astral City. The English title is Astral City, and it's a wonderful movie. It was shot in Brazil, and it's a little there are little parts of it are kind of corny and cheesy, but overall, I think it's a wonderful story, a very heartwarming story. And
now there's a follow-up to that. There's a
you're right. There's a second one, right? You got to see the first one to get the context. And I'm sure it's on YouTube. Just anyway, look up Astral City.
Yeah.
It's certainly on Gaia, if you want to get it on Gaia.
It's the story of a wealthy man who passes suddenly, and it's the story of his sort of his healing from his social position to a more spiritual position. But that's all I'll say about it.
And before I sign off, Rob, thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's fabulous. I love the fact that you're putting it into little bites that will hold the attention of people who don't read. So bless you for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm thinking it would be really great if somebody wanted to start a group and each week talk about one of those episodes, because I think it would be absolutely, I think it's the sort of thing people would like to watch the episode and talk about it, episode by episode. It's fabulous work, absolutely fabulous.
I agree, Wendy. Those are all excellent ideas.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
One question, Rob. I noticed you've used the term spiritualism in your videos. Do you mean that more specifically? You mean that was a more general term of interest in spirituality, or more specific, the traditional spiritualism?
There's actually a definition that I give in one of my videos for why I use that term. That spirituality, I think, has a lot of ties to religion and turns a lot of people off immediately, thinking that just means religious. But spiritualism, there's two main parts to the definition. One is that you think of the soul itself as the driving force of life. Mm-hmm. And the other is that information is available from souls through either mediums or channels or various others, and that's the soul is a legitimate source of information. And those, the two-part definition, I think, is exactly what I believe in. Spiritualism, a spiritualist, I think that term, I'm hoping it catches on more than it does as an alternative to religion that is still spirit focused and seems to me to be backed up by lots of evidence, even though some people would say otherwise. So I try to use that term, spiritualist.
Okay, thanks. Julia.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Yeah. Firstly, Hyacinth, I thought of you actually just before I came on, because I heard, unfortunately, this is going to be the worst hurricane ever to hit Jamaica. So we all join in sending our love and best wishes to all the people there and in the joining countries like Haiti. Bless everyone there. I hope for the best possible outcome. Rob, I've seen your two previous presentations here. They were so impressive and memorable. I think you've come on in leaps and bounds actually since then, maybe because this is your main job.
Yeah.
The wealth of information you provided us today with was breathtaking. Thank you. And Wendy's proposal was excellent. I'd love to participate in that. It really resonated with me. Firstly, I'm reading one of Dolores Cannon's 19 books. It's a book I know Gloria's spoken about as well, three ways of volunteers in the New Earth.
Yes.
So that ties in very much with what you were discussing. I also wonder, have you, and I'm going to sound very naive and credulous, I know, I hope I'm not, I don't think I am, but I wondered if you've seen presentations on YouTube from the Galactic Federation of Light. They're allegedly transmissions from very wise, benevolent, advanced beings, Arcturians, Pleiadians, etc. And they're talking very much about this new Earth moving into the fifth dimension. Reminds me of you because they also use this beautiful AI generated artwork. It's really lovely, deeply spiritual, and totally in accordance with everything that Wendy puts out in the Friday report. And they're talking a lot as well about this object 3i Atlas, which is really fascinating. And far from being a disaster scenario, this is actually supposed to be something very positive and beneficial. It's apparently going to be sending out very good frequencies to Earth to raise our spiritual vibration. So I'm just interested to know if you've come across any of this information. Thank you.
Yes, actually, what is it? My episode 22, I believe. So I actually did a Galactic Akashic Records reading session. There's a woman named Dr. Ilkner Tulune that somebody put me in touch with, and I did a session with her. It was quite lengthy, about 2 hours of her reading my own galactic past, and she talked about I think three areas that she said I have heritage from: the Vega, Arcturus, and Pleiades, and talked about the different aspects of those and how those tied into my current personality and my health and my my past lives, and actually had some good revelations of my own past lives during that discussion. So yeah, I actually walked through it, and I similarly do lots of interesting AI imagery of those different people as I'm talking through it. One thing that she brought to my attention that kind of blew my mind is that I had a previous past life regression where I remembered dying in a shipwreck, like drowning in a shipwreck, and another one where I was like a merchant in like 1800s Europe. And some things that she was saying kind of made me tie it all together, that I think in a past life I was a slave owner, and I think maybe I was a slave in a life after that to kind of get the karmic repercussions from that. So like all these like previous things that I had kind of all came together in that that session, and I talk about them in that video too. Yeah, it's an interesting concept because so many people focus on past lives that are excluding all these different races. And I don't know whether it's because we are, because they're not relevant in most cases. So people do a regression, they're not often getting these different galactic species, but we have those connections. Or is it a subset of people that actually have all those different galactic heritages? I'm not quite sure how that all fits together, but
Rob, I wonder, could it be that we have, I mean, on the assumption that eternity is infinite, that there is no beginning and there is no ending ever. Hard to wrap our minds around, but let's, for the sake of argument, we assume that eternity means what it says, that we could have a series or a chain of lifetimes in one life system. And that may be all the best we can do about remembering them. And then we may move on to another whole set of experiences based on completely different rules, as it were. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. It could definitely be that. I guess the question is just, how, for what period of time or period of experience do we have this identity as a splinter off from all that is? Do we have some kind of identity? And does that identity go to all these different systems and have all these experiences and before it recombines? Or do we just remember them all because of the recombining and that we are connected to all of these others? I just, yeah, I haven't looked into it enough to even have an opinion, but it's fascinating. Like I never even heard about this or thought about it until I was recommended to have that reading, and it's very believable.
So, Rob, have you come across in your past life work any reason why you should be so focused, so dedicated to this work? I mean, you must admit that your dedication is incredible and unusual. Have you had any insights from a past life about having come here specifically to do this work?
A couple things come to mind. I mean, there's the Jane Roberts idea of what you call them, like the speakers, the people that are basically empowered, or they have kind of the mission of bringing spiritual truths to the masses, and they've been incarnating over centuries or millennia to do so. And it's basically like, for the maintenance of humanity, there needs to be occasional injections of spiritual information, despite this veil of amnesia. Like we aren't just here to have forgotten everything and just live as physical beings. There's all kinds of beings that come in and get glimpses and help pass on information. So, I mean, it's possible that I have some of that personality and feel kind of that drive. But also in that galactic reading, one of my roles that was described to me is, I think it was the Vega heritage that brings me a connection to spiritual sides and an ability and a drive to pass it on to others, because she basically called that out in my personality as well. Yeah.
Whatever it is, we are incredibly grateful. What you have produced is unique and fascinating and amazing. I can't speak too highly of what you've done already and what you're going to be doing. If you're only just getting started, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. On another note, I was just kind of wondering if you've done anything about prayer, the power of prayer.
Yeah. That the one about miracles, it's also about prayer as well. I mean, I think those two things are kind of tightly intertwined, which are ways to manipulate the normal probabilities using energy. And that doctor I interviewed, he had a story that he gives that I include in that episode about having a man that was basically at the edge of death's door, and he said he should have been dead. He was dying. He had some technical term, agonal or something, meaning that he was dying. And then he was a minister, and he had all his fellow ministers come there, and they held like an around the clock prayer circle, and the guy lived like for a lot longer. Like he was actually came back to consciousness. He was doing better. He said that he cannot explain that medically. It goes beyond what he can explain. But that's just a firsthand story. But there's tons of stories obviously about similar things throughout history that I go through in that episode.
And of course, there has been some research. Remember Elizabeth Tart's work on prayer and healing. I think it was healing prayer, whatever. So that's absolutely fascinating. Like you touched on Tom T. Moore's work about most benevolent outcomes. That's another area that's fascinating. Whether or not that whole manifestation thing of requesting the most benevolent outcome. It's coming back to something that we've all sort of touched on today, even when we're talking about preppers, is it actually creating the negativity if everybody's I think this is something that is a quandary for us with our current political system. By focusing on it, are we actually making it worse? And are we sending negative energy to it? It's a really interesting issue.
It is, and there's one big point I think that I've come to this conclusion that, I mean, yes, you could say that this matrix reality is shared. So if enough people want to change something by agreeing in their prayer or group energy sessions to make a change to it, then it changes. I mean, it's almost like a democracy. If enough people believe that things should rise instead of fall with gravity or something, I mean, that change could be made. So if enough people agree, they can make changes around the edges to it. But then I think recent evidence is starting to show that we don't all have to have the same reality either. I mean, there can be people that focus on the negative and bring about a negative reality, and people that focus on the positive and bring about a positive reality in the same world. And the best example, I think, is in America here, the fact that literally half the country sees that their world is falling apart, that immigrants are coming and taking their jobs and killing them and abusing them, and their gender is being threatened by people with ambiguous genders, and they're just all these things that are in their reality. And then there's another half of the country that is full of, we need to help our common man. We have hope. We have, it's not a threat. Diversity is a good thing, and it's just on and on. Those are so different, and yet they coexist. And so it's like you can group yourself together with people with negative energy and create a negative reality, and you get alternative facts and alternative news. And for a while they even had a different belief about who won the election, and it's just complete different reality side by side. And it's not even geographically different. It's
Well, there is Rob, one thing that's fascinated me about the United States, and speaking of all this, is that we do have to a noticeable degree a geographic distribution of social orientation and cultural orientation. And there's a this concept being floated now of what they're calling soft secession,
hmm.
where different parts of the country would start to become, if not literally self-governing, then at least culturally more consolidated. And there was, I don't know if you know about this novel that was written back in the 1970s called Ecotopia. Does anyone remember that? Yeah, it was written by a professor in Berkeley, who was also a film reviewer. Um, and he came up with this. It was kind of a love story, but it was based on the states of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California seceding and forming their own ecotopia. There's a love story between the governor of this and the woman reporter who comes to do it. So that's the vehicle for it. But it's a concept that, on the one hand, it seems destructive or tragic to break up an entity in this way. And there's another view of it that says, well, hey, look at the European countries. They've got their act together partly because they're so small and culturally homogeneous. So I'm fascinated just kind of imagining the different ways in which our huge and diverse country could go, culturally and politically and so on. And any way you slice it, I think we're in for some interesting changes, and how we deal with that, in terms of our own, spirit and mind and heart and connections with people who may or may not share our views. I think it's going to be, to say the least, a very interesting time coming up. With there's an energy of unity, there's an energy of positive diversity, and then there's an energy of schism. It's all boiling in the same pot. So anyway, I don't have any wit or wisdom to add to that, but just to observe that we seem to be on this threshold of a very dynamic time, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. Right, now, getting back to Rob's, what I'm thinking would be really great is how many people would be interested if we did start a group on looking each week at a different episode of Rob's work. Now, Rob doesn't have to be there. I know he's a very busy man and he's very very committed to lots of other projects. I love the structure of your work. I can see it being a great format for discussions. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of describe it as like a spiritualism 101. It's kind of laid out almost like a college class where you could kind of go.
Well, this is what I like. I had a request the other day from a very intelligent 13-year-old girl who was saying, I want to know about this. And I think this would appeal to young people. There are a lot of young people who sort of say, well, where do I start? Where do I start to get reliable information? And she actually said, can I attend any of your groups? And I'm saying, well, I think I know the soul is ageless. And I think if you do some preparatory work, it would be great. But I'm just thinking something like this could very much appeal to a younger audience. Do you have any thoughts on that? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Regina?
I completely agree, because I mentor a lot of young people, and I really, it's always one-on-one when they're calling, and so I'm so thrilled to be able to see what this is, what your Rob, your presentations, and I'm going to start definitely sharing your podcasts with these youth. Because they're experiencing all of these things. One of the biggest things I really am glad you brought attention to, and that is the suicide, because it seems like often a go-to thought for people of all ages. And, when I hear someone say it, it makes me cringe, and then I have to listen to why are they going that deep? What is it that they need? Is it that they're needing counseling, or is it that they haven't been able to share really their story? Sometimes that's what it is. They feel so alone that they haven't been able to share the story. And sometimes it's this kind of story. It's the knowing and not being able to share that because they're too young to be able to know these things. So I'm real excited, Rob, to be able to share your stuff, your work.
Regina, thanks for mentioning that just briefly, because it puts me in mind of the fact that so many young children, very young children, will report information from past lives. And that's immediately labeled as fantasy, or even some kind of mental illness at times. And I think, Rob, one of the things one potential that's here, I think, is to work towards making it okay to talk about these things, because it's not okay in the culture, and so many people have been so badly damaged by the inability to speak their truth.
It's funny you should mention that, because in my suicide video, I actually talk about a story of a woman who was basically using past life regression and remembering all kinds of information in the 1970s, and her coworkers ridiculed her, and then they ended up getting her sent to a mental hospital, and she got electroshock therapy and was like brain damaged from that. And she basically decided that her ability to bring these truths to humanity were forever tarnished, that she would never be taken seriously after all that. And so she killed herself. And then she came back, and then now she's the subject of a book where she is doing all that again in this life, and it's time now, and it's acceptable, relatively acceptable. So yeah, it kind of ties those two ideas together. Yeah.
About
And
that.
there's also, as we said earlier, there are a lot of young people who are experiencing telepathy, who are experiencing mediumship, and they don't quite have a vehicle to put it in. They have bits of it. And if you think about it, our culture, it's all so dispersed to the young people. They're seeing, certain bits of reincarnation, bits of that, but they haven't got a vehicle to put it all together. And that's what I love about your work. It can be a really great course for people who are starting to explore, what's what and where it all fits together. So I think we will try and do something. If we have anybody who would be interested in coordinating something like that, let's talk about it. So yeah, I think what you're on about is just, and I do think there's a real need for people to be able to process this information and talk about it, how it relates to them. Because just as you have found lots of stories within your own family,
Yeah.
other people will find stories within their own family if they have the language to actually talk about it. So I think what you're doing is absolutely monumental.
Thank you.
Hyacinth?
Yes, just to say that a 5-year-old once told me that he knew he would never die. Even if he died, he would come back. I was absolutely astounded. And then he said, once I was swimming in the sea and a shark ate me. And then he went off to the bathroom and came back and said, but I didn't die. Because here he was.
Wow.
Look, there are so many stories, so many experiences. Once people get together, there's a power in community and being given permission to discuss these stories. JL?
Oh, just that story reminded me of my son's first sentence to me. When he was 2 years old, he said, he hadn't spoken at all of a sudden there was a storm outside, and he stood on my bed with his arms up like this because he was like cheering on the weather or something, and he said to me, I've got 2 mummies. And he started telling me all about his other life ever since, from about age 2 to about age 5. It was always, and then once he started school, it sort of petered out a little bit. But he told me all about this other life, the flowers that he had on there, the people who were there, how he died in that life, how his mum and dad were. It was quite a harsh existence that he had, and it was totally fascinating. I wish I'd recorded him actually. I didn't record him, but I remember it all. I found the place now actually. I found the place now because at the time it was in the 90s and we didn't have the internet. And he said his mum was called Binger and his dad was called Binger, and they lived in Bingerland. And I thought, oh, that's imagination. But there is actually somewhere called Bingerland that I didn't know at the time in Africa. And I think Binger is a surname in that land as well. And
Wow.
there's also water in there, like a big lake area, because he did say that he drowned, that he was fishing. He told me all about the food that they ate and all that. And he talked about fishing, and he did say that he fell under the water, and that came out from watching something on the telly, and he got really, really scared. And I said, no, it's okay. That little boy will be fine. He said, no, it wasn't. Not when I was in Binger, not with my other mother. I got stuck under the water, and that was it. And I was like, oh, it was actually after he told me that full story that it started to turn into, and he went to school roughly around about that time, it sort of started to peter out. And he never liked swimming. He used to just sit on the side. Sorry, I've got quite a lot of stories from my family like that. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So Rob, coming back to your work, what's next? What's the dream? Where are you taking this? Have you got long-term plans?
I definitely have at least several, if not many, other episodes already in mind for things that I want to explore. I don't know what's really long term. I mean, just having this conversation, I could just imagine like having some kind of like online, college class type thing. That's an interesting idea. I don't know what college would have this type of would be open to this type of subject matter, but that'd be an interesting path to go down eventually. Um, I don't know, just kind of see where it takes me. I mean, I wouldn't have predicted where things are now 1 year ago or 2 years ago, or wouldn't have predicted any of this 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So I was going to keep following the opportunities and see where my intuition takes it.
And how does your family and friends, how do they relate to your work?
Um, Surprisingly, almost everybody I mention any of this to ends up being completely interested and having their own stories, like some of you all sharing, and have basically been waiting for someone to talk to about this type of stuff. I can't think of a single person, and I think this has to do with the law of attraction and frequencies. I was nervous about going down this road and having this be what I do and being public about it. And I can't think of a single negative interaction I've had with anybody about any of these topics. Like no one's telling me I'm crazy. No, it's even at my class reunion at Georgetown University, a Catholic school. I mean, I was at a presentation, and they were talking about this problem of God class, kind of a theology intro class. And I went to this presentation and I asked some questions about this and asked whether they would be open to any ideas that come from spiritualist sources and near-death experiences and reincarnation ideas. And the panel discussion people basically said, no, we don't really take that seriously. But then afterwards, like throughout the rest of the weekend, I had people coming up to me saying, wanting to talk about it, that, oh, that question you asked made me think about this topic. And there's people all over the place that are like thirsting for something other than religion to scratch that spiritual itch that they have.
Bingo, bingo.
Yeah.
This is what I love. This is what I love, that this is it's grounded and it's authoritative, and yet it's inclusive, and it's wonderful. Reminds me of what happened with the Forever Family Foundation. I don't know if you know the story. All of these were parents who had lost a child, and they were all going to these grief organizations, and nobody would allow them to talk about the afterlife. So they would meet in the car park afterwards, and the most amazing discussions would be taken place sort of surreptitiously, and without the permission of the structural organization. And I think people are hungry for this, Rob. I really do.
I was just going to say, oh, sorry, Wendy.
No, keep talking.
I was just going to say to Rob, actually, speaking as a really avid bookworm, Rob, I think your work is even more valuable than producing books nowadays. I think this statistic you've given us of only 50% of people reading books is going to rise, because we're all obsessed, aren't we, with gazing at our screens. Yes, so I think it's just so valuable. I forgot what I was going to say, actually. Oh, yeah. The only thing that occurred to me that might be missing from this incredible wealth of topics that you've provided, and I might have missed it, is about animals. I'm very interested in the spiritual progression journey of animals, the natural world. I mean, even plants have a consciousness, don't they? So I'm very interested in that sort of thing, and nature spirits. So you might want to perhaps look at how that all fits into the bigger picture as well sometime. Forgive me if you've already covered it. You've covered so much. Thank you.
I did cover it in the episode about it's called the hierarchy of frequencies, and it basically goes from like just kind of walking through it all. And Michael Newton has a really good description of this, and I borrowed a lot from him. But talks about like the all the way down to rocks, like subatomic particles and rocks and things at the lowest, to like the nature spirits, and well, it feels like collective animal souls, but then individualized animals that have been loved, like domestic animals, are like a level above because they get some soul energy from their owners. and moving on up to, you know, various levels, even humanity having kind of the psychopath level of some people that have sort of damaged souls and things, up to most humans, and then it's moving right on up into, the spirit world, as the spirit world and angels, and up to, Christ consciousness, and kind of like describing that as like a big continuum. But I really have never delved into the whole, like, pets in the afterlife that a lot of people are very interested in. I, I mean, I've had pets. I've loved pets. But a lot of people are interested in, like, will I see my, I talk about some of the questions that are asked over and over again. And it seems like everyone asks the same questions. So many times people say, will I be able to see my animal in the afterlife? And there's lots of stories that you can. But I've never been too interested in it personally. It seems sort of like they have their own thing going on. And Dolores Cannon talked a lot about how we may have all progressed through a lot of those earlier lower level, lower plane beings, like maybe we used to be, nymphs and fairies and things like that, and then animals, and then the souls that become humans have kind of done their time in those lower planes already, and then been ready to get a human soul, which I think is an interesting perspective on it.
Okay. First of all, Rob, if you're interested in doing anything else, any other ones, or would like to do a class, I wouldn't mind working with you. That would be fun. And I don't have my website running right now, but anyway, I can put my email in the chat. If not,
Yeah.
if you're interested eventually,
Yeah.
we're just expanding so that we can get this out to the youth. I don't think it's that important to be in a college. I mean, a college level, that's a whole different game, but just because there's so much youth out there that is searching the internet. And we want to give them something that isn't, not we. Listen to me. I'm so sorry, Rob. It'd be great to present something to the youth so that they don't feel like they're being talked down to, but because when they come in from this perspective of their spiritual awakening or are already awake, they're our colleagues.
Absolutely. This is my feeling. Exactly. I can remember Victor mentoring a 14-year-old boy years ago, and he was asking adult level questions, exactly, but he wanted it in a palatable way. And of course, he's gone on to become quite a well-known afterlife researcher. And it's fascinating that young people are asking the questions. Even there are so many young people who are exposed to divorce, to trauma, to and of course there's so much in the media that is just absolutely traumatizing to kids. They're looking at this questions of death all the time in the media.
All the time.
Rob,
I'd like to go into any of those schools that are dealing with these kids.
Absolutely.
And assure them, or even bring the children forward so that they could speak with the rest of the students, as a channeler, as a medium, or any of that, or their parents. But this is that's a whole different game. I am interested in bringing this closer to the mainstream of our youth, because they're replacing us eventually. And there's loads of them. The vibration, as everybody is sitting there whining and complaining in fear of the vibration of everybody is lowering. My thought is there are so many individuals who are being born, who are coming into this world, that are lit. They are lit up and they're ready to go.
Yes, absolutely.
And so are we. We are too. all of us across the world, all of the light workers are getting higher and higher and higher as far as our frequencies, and it's it's opening windows and doors to people whose minds had been closed before and they never knew. And then all of a sudden they want to talk about it and they want to share it. And you've got a lot of information there, Rob, just from what I was looking at, just from your what you presented. It's amazing. And it's done very strategically, carefully. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, because you're an editor, producer, writer, those are all things that are, and you're an IT person. So you think linear. I'm around, I go ask Dan. Dan and I go back ages. He knows that I talk around the barn, go around 6 more times, and maybe I'll get in the door with the conversation. But right, Dan. Anyway, you've got a great
Regina, I'm an engineer and Regina's a poet.
I didn't even know it. Anyway, thank you, Wendy, for that, everything, and for Rob, what you're presenting is fabulous.